Hey everyone, I'm Michael. I'm here with Emily and Allie. So excited to be here. We are coming at you for the Youth Advisory Board, and today's topic is really, really important. We are talking about bullying today, and that's something that whether you see it or not is really impacting a lot of young people in our state, in Connecticut, and worldwide. So we're really happy to have this discussion on helpful things, what's not helpful. So I'm going to start, Emily, with you. Can you share a little bit about how bullying has impacted you?
Bullying has impacted me on a very large scale because I was bullied like throughout all of my school years, and I think it's just affected me. Like, the short story is it affected me because because of my bullying, because of the bullying I had in my past, I just, I have, I just, due to that, I'm just very, let's see, I don't know, I just don't react. Because I was just like the bullying that I experienced was very, like, I used to get like screamed at in the hallways by this one particular person. So, and like right up in my face. And in my experience, when I would tell like the teachers and stuff, they wouldn't believe me. So, because of them not believing me regarding that, I sort of have trust issues. And I'm not very good with like people screaming very loudly, like that just brings back like the memories of getting like bullied in like a crowded hallway and things like that. So I'm not like, I have you can't really like boil it down to one issue. I have like several little tiny issues when it comes to my bullying experiences.
Well, Emily, I first want to thank you for being so open. I know it can be really hard to talk about, and you could totally tell both Allie and I were like, oh my God, we're getting so upset just hearing all you went through. And so Allie, I'd love for you to talk about, and we'll, as always, Emily, we'll be talking about many aspects of bullying and
Yeah.
everything. So I just want to thank you for really going there. And I really think our listeners are going to learn a lot from you both today. So thank you. So Allie, could you share a little bit about how bullying has impacted you personally?
Sure. Bullying has impacted me in a bunch of different ways. I definitely started hanging out with different crowds that maybe weren't the best influences on me because of bullying. I would go, a lot of people would bully me on the fact that my family had either mental health or substance use problems, especially with my brother. And like, I'm psychotically protective over my brother. So like, they can bully me all they wanted, but when they would bring him into it, I would get really, really upset. Um, and I remember in middle school, it was like mostly about me, and it would just be about anything. It would be the color of my hair, it would be what I was wearing that day, what I wasn't wearing. And like, I went to a school where a lot of kids were really, really well off in life, or their parents, I should say, or their families. And so a lot of them wore a lot of designer label clothing and were like deep into that. I personally was never like that big of a deal about it, but they made it a big deal. And like the fact that I would wear like fake boots that people didn't wear the right ones of or whatever, like people would always be like, oh, she's poor, and like make fun of me for that. And I mean, it would bother me, but I think the other stuff would bother me more, of like my family and my own mental health stuff, for sure.
Now, thank you for sharing, Allie. I think, um, you know, I think we'll probably come up with this again and again, just how pervasive it is, how much it's there, whether parents want to admit it or claim they see it or don't see it, teachers, professionals. I mean, hearing you both brings me back. I mean, you know, my bullying experience, kind of like what you were sharing, Allie, it was, oh, I wasn't dressed in the cool clothes. I like right out the gate, I felt, you know, the outsider. I was off on my own. So like every recess was, I'm like, it's like, felt like a battlefield. Like, oh, all these kids have friends. I'm like the lone person out here who's like searching for someone that seemed friendly, and like recess would just be terrifying. Where most kids on the playground are having fun, I'm like, oh, who's gonna like me or accept me? And yeah, it just like so much comes back to bullying and in all those stages. So Emily, back to you. Can you talk about a little on what professionals can do to support young adults being bullied?
I'm still muted. Oh yes. Due to the fact that when I was younger, the professionals, like the paraprofessionals in particular, and the teachers, they kind of turned a blind eye to the fact that I was bullied, because they, you know, they really honed in on the fact that I had a better home life than my bully. So they would feel like sorry for her, but they would totally disregard my bully getting all up in my face and yelling at me because, oh, well, that couldn't have happened. She's so nice and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, yes, you like I hate how adults, like, they see they see the fake person that they put on for adults, but then I got the real, like, hostile and uh I got the, like, angry and, you know, just full of animosity person, and they got this fake person that, like, you know, they couldn't hurt a fly or whatever. So, like, the biggest thing that I suggest is believe the person. Like, somewhat unrelated, but also kind of not, is I follow this woman who has a very disabled child that they have a TikTok account, and this woman was very wary of putting her daughter on, like, in mainstream class, because she didn't want her to get bullied because of her many disabilities. And that just resonated with me because I have many disabilities, and due to my academic standards or whatever, I was just put into regular classes, and which was for the most part fine because I made friends because of that and everything. But a downside to me being, I don't know if this makes sense, but like a normal, like, disabled person, I was subject to the trials and tribulations of being like, because my physical disabilities and neurological stuff, but my emotional and cognitive, everything was great. Like, I understood that I was being bullied. I understood what the adults were like what my bully was doing, and I understood, I mean, not at the time, but looking back, I understood that I was very depressed because of the things my bully would say and do, and all that kind of thing. So it's rough when you understand what bullying is and you're disabled. You know what I mean? It's very, like, hard to actually be able to conceptualize that kind of thing.
Totally, Emily. And again, thank you for sharing. I think a couple of points that jumped out I want to again recap for the listeners here is, as you said, Emily, is always listen, take it at face value, like who's making that up, like, so I think that that's a great point to make. And that I think, you really talked about the impact of that and your self-esteem. I think we all can relate to the effects on our self-esteem, how we see ourselves. I know it really like destroyed my already like fragile self-esteem. So yeah, there's just so many layers to that. So thank you
Right.
for sharing more, Emily.
You're
Allie, can
welcome.
you share a little bit about yeah, what professionals can do to support young adults, or anything else that comes to mind around that?
I think what Emily said about believing them is huge, because it takes so much for someone to actually come forward and like say that this is what's going on. So when they do, like, honor that and try to find a way to keep the person anonymous as much as possible. And if you see the bullying going on, stop it, like get into it, and to not forget about the bully, because like Emily said, the bullies usually hurt too, as they say, hurt people. So there are so many more resources nowadays on what to do with the bully and how to handle the bully, that I think people don't take advantage of working out, and they just punish the bully, and that doesn't get anywhere. That the people may not learn what the real lesson that needs to be learned or whatever. And I think when you take that time to learn how to help the bully as well as the victim, then that will make a longer term impact. And then hopefully the bully won't keep repeating, because they're repeating it because they're getting something out of it. So I always wonder, what it would look like if teachers or professionals or whatever paid attention to how to help the bully too. But again, like Emily said, like also don't forget about the victim, and be aware that just because you may not see the bullying where you are doesn't mean that it's not happening, because a lot of my bullying, did it happen in school? Yeah. But most of it started or was perpetuated outside of school, whether it was a sports game, social media, something. So I always encourage people that work with young adults to be mindful that there's a whole life outside of school or whatever setting you're in where you see the bullying, and that has a lot of insight of what's going on.
Totally. I'm nodding as always for, when both of you were speaking. And so I think, again, the recap for our listeners really has been, again, believing anyone who's reporting bullying. And you're right. I think, as Emily, you mentioned too, and part of believing young adults who are reporting being bullied is, like, of course, duh, like most bullies are not going to immediately raise their hand if someone asks them, are you bullying? Like, who's going to like admit that? Like, it's a whole song and dance, a game, right? So I think it's always interesting when professionals who have power, like if it didn't happen 2 feet away, like to them, it doesn't exist. That's ridiculous. So you're right. I think there needs to be more awareness on that. And you're right, Allie, that young adults, especially today, it's not just the 9 to 5, so to speak. It's I think that's a really great point. And I think the final point I want to make, and I'm so glad you brought this up, is the whole aspect of how do we find balance of holding bullies accountable but still helping them. It's not the old way of just punish and then like, oh, check off the box, okay, we sent them to detention or suspend, whatever it is. Like, you're addressing the root cause. And I know we're all really passionate about stopping the cycle of discrimination and et cetera as advocates. So I think that's really great that you brought that up. So Emily, going back to you, can you talk a little bit about what parents can do to help support young adults being bullied? Oh, sorry, Emily, you're muted.
What I know from my personal experience is that number one, parents can listen to you, but like, which is what my parents did. But what my parents did not do, and this is what they regret, is they listened to me because, I'm a undiagnosed, mentally ill child, their child. And they just never like, they didn't know how like actually bad it was. I mean, they knew it was bad because of what I was saying, but they didn't know the extent to which I was like really, really telling the truth, because, they also had me saying, oh, she bullied me and blah, blah, blah. She did this, she said this. But then I also had the extra layer of, oh, well, my aide didn't believe me, or, oh, well, my aide told my teacher, which is why my teacher called you mom. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like from what I know, like they like parents, number one, should number one believe their kid. Number two, like, and number two, get into contact with, I don't care if it's the special ed person, I don't care if it's the paraeducator, and mostly it should be like either the principal or the assistant principal, because the assistant principal is the number one person that can get the perpetrator in trouble, because the aides and the teachers, they really don't have as much power. And if you're in special ed, you're gonna kind of be nice and soft and want to be nice to everybody, even if the student with disabilities is gonna want to be like, is gonna want to like totally like destroy the person that's bullying them. I know that I sort of had those feelings, and I still have those feelings. And it's like because bullies usually get away with murder, so the number one thing is to like listen to your kid and get the person that is the bullying person into the correct hands where that can be dealt with, because I don't want the next generation, which is the current generation, I think, to be in therapy having to still rehash being bullied. And for me, it's been about a decade, so I'm still dealing with these issues where it's like I have trust issues when it comes to like not that I like have made like new in real life friends, but I just have like trust issues when it comes to people just being off and being different and being like different than the way I thought they were being, because it's like when a bully switches it up on you, it's kind of like you don't know why they're doing it, and you're used to them being like, because in my experience, you can cut me off at any time, but in my experience is like my bully used to hug me unsolicited. Now, mind you, I have a disability that had a startle reflex, so for her to hug me and I not expect it, she startled me for one. But for number two, like I didn't like her, so I didn't want her touching me. So yeah, it's like, just number one, like, parent, like I know that like what it boils down to is that parents and adult and professionals no matter the way a student communicates, they need to listen to that student. Like they need to just, excuse me, listen to them and just like believe them when they tell you that things are happening.
No,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that, Emily. I think a couple of points you brought up, because you're all bringing up amazing things with every question. I think, you know, what you talked about, making sure parents are communicating with the schools. I think, like in our advocacy work, we hear so much. It's either like the blame game, parent, school, like a tennis match, and not to say like one side's always right or wrong. It's just, you know, being on top of, you know, of following up and following through and all those kind of like common sense things. But I think we unfortunately hear a lot of times it's not always that easy, or things follow, you know, are being followed through. So that's a great point. And just it's not enough that you tell your parents if they're not going to work with the schools and vice versa. So that's really important. And I think you brought up a lot of other great things, but I really I just want to acknowledge how powerful what you just shared was with your bully crossing line with boundaries and hugging you, because on the surface a professional, I mean, I don't know, they might think, oh, they're trying to get along, good for them. Well, no, like, you know. And I think the other great point you mentioned,
Right.
and it's so important to hear, is that there can often be this fight of, okay, like if I'm being bullied, how do we stand up for ourselves and not get in trouble? I think there's so much blaming and scapegoating that can happen where if someone's being bullied, well, we want to handle what we can on our own, but there's a limit we all personally have. So I think you brought up a lot of great points. And so, Allie, I can tell you are dying to hop on and follow up with this. So do you want to share a little bit about what parents can do and anything that's coming up for you on this question, and from what Emily shared?
Honestly, I think back to what I said before about, you know, paying attention and using resources that are out there. There's so many resources out there right now that are free, that are simple, you know, engine search, that you can find so many resources. So if your kid is the bully, or if your kid is on the receiving end of the bullying, to be, you know, to get that help for. One thing that just kind of came to mind, and I don't know if this is really advice towards parents, but it could be. A lot of times bullying, try to not be naive to where bullying can take place. A lot of times people assume, oh, that's a establishment of faith, or so therefore it won't have any bullying because people are there to have, you know, good hearts and all these kinds of things. But I actually experienced some of the most bullying in churches, in women's empowerment groups, things like that. I think a lot of times people don't think of those settings that bullying can take place, and it can be very subtle and but also very powerful. So I guess the only thing I can say to add is to not underestimate the impact that the bullying is having on, you know, your child or something, or, you know, whoever, because so many times I hear teens talk about being bullied and they tell their parents, you know, they're doing all the things that people hope that they will. They're speaking up about it. They're going to the people, and then they get hit with, oh, it's not that bad. That's just normal behavior. Oh, it's because they have a crush on you, or all these kinds of different things where I'm like, no, that completely disvalued anything that person just said. So I always say, like, take it serious, even though it may seem minor to you in that standpoint, or it might not bother you if you were in that situation, doesn't mean that it won't bother the person that it's being affected by.
No, that's a great point, Allie. And you're right. I think going into this video session, I think the major scope and purpose, let me get that out, was about school-based bullying, because that's what we hear most. But you're totally right in that we've had many conversations on where are power imbalances in society, you know, places of faith,
Even
work,
places of work.
yeah,
Yeah, see,
exactly.
we
Yeah, so
both,
we're all on the
yeah.
same page. So, but and we can hear like the tale as old as time, right? Bullying happens, and you hope to God that like the person being bullied is listened to. And but there's so many cases we hear in the media, nationally, internationally, wherever, right? On whistleblowers who it's just so pervasive in all aspects, and I don't, it's not fun that it's true, but we have to admit things to change them. So I think that you're right, just being really aware and just being that open and honest, first step in believing, and that can be uncomfortable for a lot of people. I think this speaks to a bigger issue of how all of us can be a community and be a support to each other. So lots of further conversation, I'm sure, down the road on this. So Emily, is there anything you'd want schools to know about bullying? We touched on a lot of stuff on this already, but are there any other thoughts on actions they can take to stop or prevent or change any of this from happening?
Schools to know is just to like not think that, oh, you're just trying to be friends, oh, they have a crush on you, like that is like complete, like that is not true. It is, well, when I was getting bullied, it was like the mid to late, like in like the beginning of the 2010s, but like I was getting bullied in like the 2000s and the 2010s, and like things have like changed, but they really haven't. So like what like schools need to know is that bullies don't care. Like, yes, to professionals, they want to make it seem like, oh well, I'm trying to be Emily's friend and blah 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 blah. Whereas me being me, I'm like, I know the difference between a friend and what you are, and you are definitely not my friend. So of course I kept my mouth shut. But it's like, it's just so funny that like adults really need to like understand that they are not like they need to take away this notion that like they're trying to be friends, or like they really need to like knuckle down and get serious. Because like if you're saying that somebody that is bullying a disabled child is trying to be their friend and they're not, they're actually bullying them, that's not good for when the child grows up and becomes an adult and tries to tries to be friends with any random on the street. If they have that cognitive level where they're like that. I am fortunately not. So they really need to like pay more close attention into like what a child with disabilities is communicating, instead of just brushing it off and feeling more empathy and sympathy towards the bully than the person actually being bullied.
Totally, yeah. And I think you really brought up being present, because if you and a supportive adult, if you're not being present, you can totally miss the deeper meaning and the bigger picture. And I know that goes into self-care and all that. And so on that note, Allie, is there anything you'd want to add to the conversation on what can schools do?
I think schools can take a look at what other schools are doing across the country to combat bullying and prevent bullying, and to deal with it when it does happen. I think there are some creative ideas out there that schools are implementing and already using, and it's showing success. One I can think of off the top of my head, I'm not sure where it is, but they had student allies. So they had people in the school in each grade that were considered student allies, and they were people that were people that people can go to that were getting bullied or some, having a hard time or anything like that. And those allies can be there to support them and help, have the conversations that may need to be had. And also they had the peers, so the students were peers, so it was much more easier for they're much more approachable, I should say, and than a teacher or a staff member. But other than that, there's some creative ideas out there that I think that schools can definitely take advantage of. And I know that the peers were in one school, they were actively like monitoring the common areas. Like there would be, and some of them would be anonymous allies. So that way they were like incognito. So you wouldn't even know that they were there. So they would be there to kind of witness what was going on and point out some things in a way that wasn't like, finger pointing that person. It really encompassed everyone to be a really good support system. So I just encourage schools to see what else is out there and see what you can try to implement in your own school.
I love that. And I want to recap before I share my thought on this. So one, I think you brought up the great point, Allie, that it takes a village, so to speak. And what I love is getting students involved in that. And what I think is great too is that, by building involvement, it becomes by making a community, it just is. So I think bullies can thrive on just that one-on-one in most cases, where it's just that person can feel helpless or powerless. But I think by outnumbering the bully and building that strong community and just being aware of it as a culture, it can really be far-reaching. And I think for me personally, when it comes to what do I want schools to know, this came up, in our advocacy work. You may all remember this, where someone was sharing how there was some bullying going on, but it was by the freaking teacher. And so, that didn't happen to me personally. But then when I'm reading more about this and our state laws and what's going on, there's really nothing. But there wasn't, from what I found, a catch-all gotcha law or policy in place to really, they basically made it as freaking difficult and as hard as possible to really hold teachers accountable. And I find that so sad that if you're someone in the teaching profession, you would even do this. So, but I think that that it's not often talked about. And Emily, I know if you're okay, do you want to pop on and talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So my experience, oh God, I thought I wasn't muted anymore. So, like I said, okay, so my beginning of high school was not the greatest. So my parents ended up putting me in the special ed math all throughout my 4 years of school. But anyhow, because it was just because of my learning disability, but due to that, I developed a pseudo close relationship with my math special ed teacher. And she was the kind of person that during class, she would be all nice, but towards the end of class, she would get kind of, I don't know, snide or mean or just little things that I don't even remember what I said. But there were times when I would I don't know. There were times when I would literally leave class crying because she would make me cry. And I was just I'm sorry, but I want to go to lunch. I do not want to sit here and have you yell at me for God knows what reasons, because I'm hungry, I'm irritable, I'm 16. I want to go and be a kid for half an hour because my school only had half an hour, and her and her teacher aide would just act all nice and friendly, but then hit me with whatever they were trying to say, and they would like really like gang up on me for whatever. And like, my friend at the time, she would be there because she would be the one that I would go to lunch with, because my parent would like drop me at that class, and she knew that me and my friend could navigate our way to the calf by ourselves after that class. So she would witness me crying because of these I probably can't say because of these like because of these crazy teachers. And it's just, I don't think it's right that like you're supposedly in the teaching profession and you think you can just yell at a kid because you're a special ed teacher, you're not a gen ed math teacher. It's like it I don't know. I just now as an adult, I kind of like don't trust when people say they're in the special education field, because it's like, wait a minute, you're the kind of teacher that, yes, you teach them special ed, whatever, but you're also the kind of teacher that makes their class seem all kind of homey and nice, and you may or may not like be mean to your students, so I don't trust you. It's very like, it's very complicated, because on the one hand, I like special ed teachers, like, but on the other hand, it's like, I'm kind of look at them like, oh, you're kind of sketchy, because I've had, special ed teachers be not so nice. And then you have the antithesis of like, there were other special ed math teachers that were like, cool and like really cool. And I wish that I had been in their classes, because those teachers treated me like a human and not as a punching bag. Anyway.
No, thank you for sharing that, Emily. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I think you brought up the great point that the trauma of being bullied can have far-reaching and long-lasting impact. And as you mentioned, the distrust of professionals and really how it shapes how young adults and students see the world and see people. So I think you brought up a lot of a reminder for all of us professionals to be trauma informed, and as Ali is mentioning, be aware of resources and taking advantage of that, and being open to learning more about yourself and how you're viewing things. And I know we can't resolve and talk about this as much as we would like to due to time, but I think this is bringing up a lot for more conversations, more action from all of us. So Ali, hopping over to one of our last questions, do you have any advice for how young adults can support each other?
Sure. The best advice I can give for young adults to be able to support each other and teens to support each other is to just keep in mind that to just be mindful of the things you say to someone and how you treat them. And even when you're hurting and it may feel like it's okay to hurt someone else, it's not. And there's more people that are willing to have your back and be your friend than to be on the other, your enemy. And if you are someone that's being bullied, I know it sucks and it's really hard. And I can totally understand why it would completely shape the way you feel about yourself. Just try to keep in mind that how those people view you is not who you are. And just know that they're doing that because of something they have going on with them. And it's not you. And there's nothing wrong with you. And there's nothing that, and you don't deserve it. You don't deserve to be treated like that. And that's very unfair. And I hope that you reach out to somebody that you can trust and just to talk to them. And I hope that you can find maybe a group or something of other people that might be going through some things and can give you some advice, or even just be a listening ear. And, you don't always have to report the bullying. I know people say, okay, well, you got to report it as the only answer. But that's not the only answer. There's many other answers and approaches, and it's okay to come forward about someone bullying you, even if you get that mark of a snitch and stuff like that. That always comes to my mind, because chances are there's somebody else that's getting bullied too, and it could be worse for them. And you never know what impact that's making on that person. So you can possibly save a life from being hurt or continue to being hurt by speaking up and speaking out.
I love that, Allie. No, that's really powerful. I think you brought up a lot of great points. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing that. I think this is going to be really helpful for a lot of our listeners. So Emily, on that same question, do you have any advice for how young adults can support each other?
I do. I have some advice where I think that if if you are the person being bullied, if you are the person being bullied, it just so happened that all the times that I was being bullied, I had like people around me. So like just maybe like, like have that like person that's like your emotional support person that can like just like, even though it's like really high stress for you in the moment, like if you have like one of your friends there, and like if you have somebody that like that's not a professional, not a parent, that you can like work like talk through these issues with, like it's just important for them, for like the person being bullied to really like get that out in the open. Because I just know that like there were some times when I didn't even want to process it with my friends. I was just like, yes, that happened. Yes, I'm gonna like, keep it moving and go to class and like focus on my, school, because if I don't focus on my work, I'm going to just not function for the rest of the day. So basically they can support each other, and also like just support each other basically. And like maybe like not maybe not always report the bullying, but if it comes down to that, like at least maybe like support the person if it comes down to that.
I like that you said that, support the person that may be needing to tell, because I always say, like, especially if your safety is at risk, especially if they're threatening you and giving you physical, assaulting you, things like that is, you gotta report that kind of stuff, because that can seriously lead to much worse things in that person's future. And you have no idea. I mean, picture this, you get away with physically bullying people, your whole life, and then you get into your early adulthood, and then your adulthood, you keep doing it and keep doing it. Eventually it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, and someone out there is going to get hurt more. So I always say, like, if you're being physically assaulted, tell someone. It doesn't even have to be a teacher, just a friend, anyone. So someone else, like you were saying, Emily, someone else knows at least what's going on. May not be like a professional, but at least someone knows.
Yeah, I think you brought up both of you brought up so many good points. And I think just the impact we all have as humans around each other. So I know due to time, we have to cut this short. But Emily and Allie, thank you so much for being here, for being so open and honest, talking about your experiences. I think this is going to be so helpful. And closing it out, this is not the end of the conversation on bullying. We're going to be doing lots more work around this. This is a great, I think, way to kind of start our media campaign and really raising awareness on this. So again, thank you both so much, and look forward to more work on our anti-bullying campaign.
Yeah, so do I.
Everyone, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see y'all later. Bye.